Welcome to Brand Me. I'm Preston Konrad, and this is the podcast about doing your own thing, whether it's building a personal brand, maximizing your side hustle, or making the most of your everyday. You've heard me talk about my brand, Preston Konrad Home, and if you've ever wanted to grab something from my luxury home fragrance collection, today is your day. I want to hook you guys up with 10% off of any single item on PrestonKonradHome.com. That's one of our luxury candles or our new hand wash. Use the code BRANDME. That's PrestonKonradHome.com. Offer code BRANDME. Hey everybody, today's show is all about juggling. We are talking juggling it all with Louise Roe. Louise is a fashion journalist, broadcaster, and the founder of a new brand called Sharland England. She's also a very good friend of mine. But Louise and I chat about launching a business, maintaining your personal brand, and juggling everything from product drops to being a mom. You're going to love this episode, and the British accent, I have to say, smooth as butter. So grab a cup of tea for this episode, and here is Louise Roe. By golly, we're reunited, Louise Roe.
Here we are.
This time we've got an ocean between us, not a flight, but
I know. I
you.
really miss New York, though, and seeing it in the window behind you. I just want to get on a plane because I'm in London now, and it's really quick to get there.
It's so quick. I always say to my friends that when I pop over to London, they're like, why wouldn't you just go to California? I'm like, it's actually quicker, I think, just to get to London than it is to San Francisco.
Well, it is the same, which is crazy. And they feed you on that flight to London for free, whereas they don't feed you on the one to the West Coast. So I know where I'm going.
You and your life in London is something I want to touch on the podcast today. But for all of those who maybe weren't following along when you and I worked together or hosting our show on TLC and they don't already know you, what are you up to? Tell everybody who are you, girl? Tell everybody who you are and what you get up to in your fabulous life.
I'm Louise Roe, and I have a background in really predominantly fashion journalism. So I worked at Vogue and InStyle and Elle and all those titles that are slowly all going digital and slipping away. But it was a while back because I'm very old. And it was when it was the sort of glory days of magazines being glossy and fab. So I feel very lucky. I got to go to Fashion Week and the Oscars and all these amazing things. And I also have a background in broadcasting, so TV presenting. And I lived in LA for 11 years, which is also where you and I met and did a show together, which was a fab makeover show. And I adore you. And weirdly, my husband and I, we met on a show, and he's a director. So that's another story. But we moved.
Love him, by the way. You two are just the perfect. I mean, it's beyond. If you're not following Louise's husband in addition to Louise, please do. It's a hoot.
You two are hilarious together. I often get jealous of you two hanging out. But we moved back to England 3 years ago, and I sort of say, just in time for COVID, basically. And we moved to the countryside, found this beautiful 200-year-old vicarage, renovated it, redecorated it, and then having all these lockdowns and things, we suddenly were like, hold on, we're not ready for this yet. Let's move into London. So we swiftly moved into the city, the only people that did that during the pandemic, I think. And now we're in London in a townhouse, and we love it. And my job is I still do TV hosting, and I still write a little for The Telegraph here. But I've moved into the interior space, and I absolutely adore it. It's like a passion that has been ignited, and I'm fueling it. And I'm definitely working my socks off, but I love it. There's a lot going on at the moment.
You and I share a similar passion for interiors. It's something that someone could say that we're not, quote, classically trained in, but we're good at and we love, and we've turned it into a part of our business.
Yeah.
As someone who is a writer, has been on the red carpet, talked to every celebrity, and had quite the career in the fashion world in media, how was it cracking open that new part of your personal brand and making it a brand? Because I think a lot of people listening may have something they're good at, that they love, that is their brand, but they're like, but I really want to be a hairdresser, and I'm kind of good at it, and I want to do it. Like, what was that process like for you? Because for me, it was intimidating.
Yes, I think in the back of my mind, and I still have it, is like you said, not classically trained. So anyone at any point could turn around and say, well, you're not qualified to be designing furniture, but I do design it and I sketch it and I go with the artisans
Yep.
and make it. And I think it's about doing things with as much integrity and not to, overuse the word passion, but it is genuinely a passion that lights me up when I get to do it.
Yeah.
And I feel that there's definitely a huge connection between fashion and interiors. You have a love for the aesthetic and the creativity, putting things together, styling the way you do. And I think that they do go hand in hand, but it's something that has happened authentically and organically over a period of years rather than racing to the next thing. And I think what I'm trying to say is there are a lot of quote unquote influencers, and I do fall into that category, even though I don't love that word.
You and me both. It's so we go to these dinners and
nuts.
Sit next to someone and I'm like, I have a LinkedIn profile. Like, you're just 21 and have a phone. I feel so strange being in that category, but
yes. And like I said, I'm very old.
Ladies and gentlemen, just so you know, she is being hard. She's not. I mean, you'll see the minute you follow Louise. But
I say that as a joke. But I also am. I am an old soul. I still keep a paper calendar. I ironically work in social media and e-commerce, but I'm a bit of a Luddite, and I'm like new technology. I'm like, oh, can I have a book, please, with pages,
right.
Black and white photos. I'm literally looking at black and white photos now of my great granny who inspired my interiors brand, which is called Sharland, England, named after her. But just to finish on that point about having different ideas and not necessarily knowing how to go about starting that new career, I was always a bit scared that you could get lumped in that pile of like, oh, another influencer that just started another brand or another line of this and give it 6 months and it's gone, or you're following the pack. And I just didn't want to do that for many, many years, even when I lived in LA, and my team were often saying, come on, what's the next thing? Because you can't just be shooting photos, or it's great to have TV show, but do you want to really have something with your footprint on it? And I just said, no, I'm not ready because it's not come yet. And it needs to be done properly. And then I think during lockdown, a lot of people had a moment of peace where their brain could actually think. And I did. I felt suddenly quite creative because there were no meetings, there was no racing around. You were stuck in your house, which wasn't great. But in some ways it was weirdly, because I looked at old books and I started getting ideas. And so I designed a range of rattan furniture and also accessories. And then I started collecting antique chairs, which I have reupholstered in a fabric I created in the UK. And I'm really proud of it. And I'm currently talking to about 6 different countries where I've got artisans making my next thing, which is tabletop, to add to the collection. So I'm very excited.
It's really incredible what you've done. And I felt a similar unlock, a mental unlock during COVID. My brand had kind of been in the works, but it was really the lockdown that made everything kind of come out of me and bring it to life, similar to you. Is there a way that, I think for someone like you that juggles many talents and is good at many things, from on camera to writing behind the screen to taking beautiful photos of yourself to designing home decor, how do you go about identifying what parts of you go into the Louise Roe brand, right? Because you could also be good at a jump rope, but you're not going to sell jump ropes, right? Yes. So I think, how do you kind of hammer out what the house is built on?
Gosh, that's a really good question.
Because I would hate, I see these people who, God bless them, friends of mine who are like, I had the best idea and it's something. And I don't want to say, God, that's weird, but it doesn't feel like you, or something, right? Yeah. It doesn't, it doesn't feel like your brand or something.
Honestly, this might sound like an annoying answer, but it's in your gut, and I think the instinct, and I've never doubted. And when I'm designing plates, and right now I'm designing hand-embroidered linens that are being created in India, and every time I get a sample back or a color, it's a very definite, yes, love this more than anything I've ever seen, or no way, no way. There's no gray area in the middle. And I felt like that about the launch of this brand.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to think strategically and long term. I'm very, very happy for it to be very small for a long time and grow slowly as long as it does grow. But I didn't call it Louise Roe Home or Louise Roe anything, because I wanted it to stand alone from that. And yes, I'm in some of the pictures on the social, we've got all the social platforms for Sharland England, but I don't want it to feel like just me holding things up. I want it to have its own identity. That's really important to me. But then I also am aware that I need to use the other skill sets I might have and the followers to promote it and bring attention to it. So, I think I've used the skills of knowing how to manage social platforms to direct people there, but without becoming too annoying and salesy.
Do you find a struggle there do you feel an internal pressure? I sometimes do. And I think now they've been trained, but I feel sometimes I'm talking about my company so much that people are like, just send me the fucking link for the jeans. I don't want to hear you selling me more stuff of your own brand. Like, do you feel that internal struggle at all? Because I hate saying this, but I think a lot of people are on Instagram to get stuff.
Completely.
Where'd you get the hair done? Where'd you get the lipstick? Where'd you get this? Send me the link now. And it's like, well, support me. I've supported you, I feel a little pressure sometimes.
Yes, no, I hear you. I think that you are very organic and always have a sense of humor about what you do. So I never think that about you specifically.
That's good.
Yeah, no, really. And I think that that's a nice compliment that I will sometimes get too, is that I just want to be as sort of true to, when you do see my husband and I being silly on Instagram, that is what we're like on and off camera. And so I hope I'm the same when I'm talking about, if it is my brand, it's the passion of explaining how I style it. For example, I've got a little console table that I use as a dressing table with a mirror on top, or I love styling it up on a Friday with cocktails and it becomes your cocktail cart. And I love doing that. That's fun for me. And like all the paint behind looks great against it. So it becomes more of a design element and there's a bit of a takeaway rather than like, buy this, and I think that's very important. But it also, I think, to go back to the advice for anyone listening is that nothing you have learned so far will ever be wasted, no matter how obtuse you think it was. For example, I did English literature at university, but I still, weirdly, I'm a big bookworm and I have all these old Penguin classics and I ended up buying a load and handwriting thank you notes. And those are out in every single box that goes out. And people have really responded to it because they're nerds like me. And I love that. If you like antiques, you're probably going to like an old Penguin classic that comes wrapped in a velvet ribbon. Equally, my background in journalism, I have tried to be as sort of thinking with that hat on when I'm writing about the product or doing even captions, having a sense of humor equally still mates with a lot of editors. And I am kind of like, hi.
Right. Right.
No pressure, but, I'm just going to send you this. And if you like it, great. But and for that reason, I haven't had to so far have a PR, which is brilliant because I've managed to get some really lovely coverage in publications without.
I saw that. That's amazing. All the coverage you just had. It's the PR is a tricky one because we went months without, and then I kind of was like skirting around tables of editors and nudging and sending and, doing the same thing. And we ended up doing it for a bit and it did help us, but you're at the spot where you're getting such great stuff now. It's totally not necessary. You'll know the time when's right if you want PR for your brand, but there's still so much of you talking about the sending out the Penguin books and not just holding up pictures of yourself with the products on Instagram. You're still very personal. It feels like a personal brand in the way that you know who the founder is. Do you see that content with you in it performs better or there's more of a connection when you do share that on the brand side, like the response from the books?
Yes, very much so. So whether it's a photo, a still, or probably the most performative is if I go on stories and actually talk about the items themselves.
That's my favorite when you do that.
Sense,
I feel the connection.
I need to do some more, actually. That was on my list for today and it did not happen. But I like that. And it really, it's all the stuff that I was thinking when I was designing it. There are pots that come in small, medium, large. And I'm like, this is the perfect one for your waste paper basket. And this is what I've done. I put daffodils in the little ones. And it's nice to show it in my house as I'm using it in different ways. I think it's the same. To be honest, though, Preston, it's the same as like a fashion piece, because if you have a black dress or a suit and you're kind of saying, have you thought about wearing it this way, and then switch up the boot because you're going out now, to me it's the same formula. Well,
that's the best thing about your personal brand as Louise, which was on my list to talk to you about, is that and I have a idea that why your brand is doing so well, because you provide a lot of content to me that is like infotainment, that is like, I come and I'm entertained by you or your family and your life, but I also learn something. And particularly through the house reno process, there was so much infotainment there, because who doesn't want to watch a pretty hot girl knock down a wall with a sledgehammer, but then also learn about how to style something in an orangery, right? Or what the hell an orangery is. So do you find that, do you see that in your content? Like, I feel like that was a key success factor in the launch of Sharland, is because you're a knowledge base, not just a pretty face, if that makes sense.
Well, thank you very much. The answer to your question is an orangery is a conservatory that has foundations. So there's a little more wall going on, and they're beautiful. Yeah. Anyway, I think so. I think that might be back to the magazine days of where's the takeaway? What am I learning? And it was important to me when I launched the Sharland England's e-commerce site to have a blog section, because I wanted to be able to not just sell product, but, there are pieces about this room, for example. You can't really see, it's my dressing room, but there's hand painted detail on the wardrobes, and we built them, and there's a story behind it all. And so those are the sorts of things, or, how to set the table for your Easter brunch or whatever it is you're planning. I think I wanted that to be part of the feel of the shop. But being honest, it's also because having a blog section on an e-commerce site helps SEO. So
they've been yelling at me for so long about this. That the SEO, because you don't have a blog, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't need a blog. I need to sell some goods. Who's going to write it? I don't have time, so it's so smart how you laid it out, because you are a resource, but you're also a smart businesswoman. So people can use the resource, and then it works for you behind the scenes.
I hope so. And I want people to feel like they're not just being, given big products to buy all the time. They go to it for other reasons.
When you started the now second home reno process, or I guess when you started the first, did you feel that as someone who maybe didn't start their career in interior design, that would be your expertise stamp on your brand in home? Because like I launched, for example, my PK Home channel before I had the brand, because I wanted to familiarize my audience with this other part of my being. And I felt like it lended credibility. Did you have your brand in mind the whole time as you launched Louise Roe Home Social?
No, you had way more forethought than me. Mine was completely a happy accident. And I only launched, so I have, my main Instagram is Louise Roe. Then I started Louise Roe Home when we began renovating this country house. And it was just really almost like my own little mood board. It still is. It has become a bit of a business, but I'm extremely strict and protective over how many and what kinds of sponsored content I'll do on it. It's really rare. And I just enjoy this community, because it's a different kind of community of like people who are obsessed with paints and helping each other out as well. It's like, oh, there's this antique place here, and you go around the back of the restaurant, you can find, and it's so cute. I love it. But I did not have that kind of plan in mind at all. It's worked out really well. Equally, we had no idea we would do all this work to this country house and then leave it about a year after we lived in it. So all that stuff has kind of led to your point of having more of a foothold in the interior space, but it wasn't planned at all.
Are you on TikTok?
Oh, God.
I am Answer it first, and then I'll go off.
I'm not. I feel like
Am I like the 20th person to yell at you about that today or something?
Yeah. No, totally. So I got like 2 brilliant managers and they're like, come on, Louise. And I'm like, I just don't want to be doing dances. But they say it's not just for dancing.
Can I tell you something? I'm about to, in less than a year, really in the last 3 months, surpass my Instagram following on TikTok that I spent a decade building on Instagram.
Really?
Yeah.
And do those people purchase though?
So I had this conversation with a friend the other night. We're watching Drag Race at a little Drag Race viewing party, and I'm showing him my TikTok. I'm very proud of it. He's like, I think TikTok's all fucking inflated. I think TikTok inflates the numbers. Does it even help? Like, do you have any proof? And I said, look at my Shopify. And I pulled up the Shopify from the day before when a video of my candles went viral. And I called my business partner in LA. I said, the Shopify won't stop going off. I'm freaking out. Like, it's like order. And it doesn't, it doesn't do that normally. It doesn't. We're a small business.
Yeah.
But the reason I ask is because I'm in design TikTok because I dedicate my TikTok just to home and hacks. So that's all I really see on my algorithm. And I think you, as a storyteller and as someone who's amazing in front of the camera and has a great voice for voiceover, you would
just do it.
Fucking smash.
Out of everyone,
I'm following all these girls who are renovating. Hi, I'm Susie. I'm renovating an 1820s farmhouse in Carolina and blah, blah. Fuck Susie.
Preston Konrad.
I love Susie, but I think you should be Susie too.
Oh, I love you. Well, all right. I'm more convinced by you than anyone else. And I think, God, where do I find the time? Okay.
Well, so that leads to my next question is we've talked about all this amazing stuff, your career, your background, your brand, the homes, not to mention you have children and a husband and a personal life. Talk to everybody at home about the juggling of all of this. And I hate to say this to a woman, how do you find the time? But really, I want to personally know how the hell you find the time because I am blown away what I see you put out.
I don't have it figured out, and I don't think anyone does. And I remember Chriselle Lim, who has a ton of employees and followers and is in the fashion beauty space in LA, saying to me once, balance is a bit of a mystical, silly word because nobody has it. And if you get it for one afternoon of your life, then just cherish it and be really proud of yourself because then it will go away again. And I think once she said that, it was almost like the permission to go, okay, there is this pressure. And I felt that even more living in LA than I do in London, where it was like, come on, be perfect in every single tick box scenario. I feel I did. So when we moved house this summer, I also gave birth the end of May and then launched.
I was watching that from a mile away or a million miles away being like, the timing of this woman, I'm like, she is just tackling all of this now.
And I did kind of limp to Christmas being like, wow. But then everyone else seemed to be that same way this Christmas. Right. So it's still, there are still meltdowns and moments when I'm like, I just can't do all this, or I feel like a bad mum that week because I've done too much work, or I feel like a crap businesswoman because I haven't been available for that enough. But I try practical, right? I try and map out each week and schedule as much as I can, knowing that it won't all go to plan and stuff will be cancelled and extra stuff will come in. I shouldn't even need to say this, but I would always prioritize my children, my family first above and beyond anything. Yeah. And, nothing else matters if you don't have that at all. And then this is really nerdy and fun. I also try and schedule in at least once every 2 weeks one of my cultural visits, because when we moved back, I wrote a list of all the galleries, museums, little old houses. National Trust is this organization in the UK that you can get a membership to. It's brilliant. And all the old castles and stately homes, Downton Abbey vibes, In fact, you can go and visit Downton Abbey. That I go and I will do one. So tomorrow I'm going on a tour of the Soane Museum, which is unreal. If you're not in London, just look it up on Instagram. When he died, Sir John Soane was a fantastic architect. And when he died, it was in his will that this house would remain untouched. You couldn't move a vase, a picture. The Victorians did, but then luckily after that it was put back. But it's insane. You'd love it, Preston. Next time you come,
I would
go.
die.
So those are the sorts of things that, and I do a little bit of working out, but I'm been a bit rubbish on that. Something always drops. And it's probably social life at the moment. That there's not much of that going on. A little. But I do these little cultural trips because they fill me up with inspiration, and it gets my brain going, and it's a reminder of why I want to be in the creative industry. Because back to something you said earlier, you could just make hundreds of thousands of, like, I don't know, electric razors or something and sell them and make money that way. But there's a reason why I want to take the more difficult path, and those moments of going to see something that's super old and interesting remind me.
I'm going to start tagging you, because I've just circled and put 5 stars around this thing, a note of booking in the cultural visits. And I'll tag you when I start my first one, because you live in these beautifully rich cities with great culture. And I often find myself perched at this desk talking to people, or on a Zoom, or in crying in the corner about something with shipping or manufacturing. But the last time I've been to the Met, I couldn't tell you. I mean, I went for work to sit on the steps and talk to famous people, but I haven't been inside. It's
true. And you do forget, like, you're in New York City. And I think when you go as a tourist, like the Neue Gallery, did you watch, like, The Woman in Gold? I remember watching that on a plane.
Yeah.
And then I was already going to the Neue Gallery the next day, not realizing that's where The Woman in Gold was. And I just think, you can get these moments not just in New York and London, but I appreciate it all.
I've added that to my list. I've put 1 million stars around it. Before we run out of time, I also want to ask you, because you are a personal brand Louise, and you do have a brand, Sharland, how do you strike the balance with what you do and don't share of your personal life on your personal brand outputs? Like, do you ever struggle there?
I used to, and now I know where I'm at, and I'm actually really strict. And I think that what I share is always real. Nothing is pretend, but I think it might feel like I share more than I really do, if that makes sense. So, for example, I would never share my toddler's face, but I think a lot of people don't notice that, because I'll share side of her face or the back, or, she's running behind. But actually, I was talking to a friend about this yesterday, and she said, before I sort of knew your little girl, I wouldn't have recognized her. And I'm like, great, that's the best thing you ever could have said, because that's the worst nightmare, is some random running up to her and knowing her name. And I'm not saying, like, 99.9% of your followers are lovely, but you just never know if there's a weirdo in the background. Yep. And then my baby's very little, so I do show her face. But to be honest, I'm going to stop very soon, because she's no longer a newborn. And I always say, judge it by what makes me feel icky in my tummy. If I'm not comfortable with it, that's the feeling. And then I'll say no. And so I think I probably used to share a little bit more than I do now. And I think that perhaps that's just coming with age. And I will, I'm so hardcore on those boundaries, because otherwise it can just snowball. And there are people who I'm great friends with who have completely different boundaries on what they're comfortable with. And that's fine, but I know mine, and I stick to them.
I really respect that. I mean, I'm very similar. I mean, my partner never shows up on Instagram, and that's his choice. It's his choice. He really chooses. He really doesn't like it, and he didn't sign up to be talking to a bunch of random people. Yeah, like I did.
Respect that, and you talk about him. We know he's there, but I think there's a real level of respect for that. There should be, anyway.
It feels nice. What is next for this brand? Because as a fellow brand builder, before I let you go, I'm so excited. You've talked about the development of what you're working on, but what kind of future do you see for Sharland England? I'm so loving the branding. I'm loving the products. I'm an old soul at heart too. I'm a lady uptown in my dreams, and I very much just identify with it. What's next?
You're a bit of an Upper East Side old lady, and I love you.
Oh, God. Give me a poodle and an old Chanel jacket, and I'd be happy.
Yes, 100% tweed. It's nice to have a plan, but also not know. I want to throw a really small event, and I've got an idea wear somewhere that hasn't actually had an event before in London, a really beautiful space. And like I mentioned, there are going to be plates, mugs, napkins and tablecloths. I'm very excited about that. I also don't want to run before I can walk. I think it's important to let it breathe. I was talking to this incredible fabric designer, Natalie Farman-Farmer, who I have massive respect for, last week. And she said, the interiors industry is a lot slower than the fashion industry, and it can take a long time for the favorite bestseller to actually appear as such. And I'm happy to just, I'm going quite fast at the moment. So I'm happy once these products come to fruition. I saw some samples today that are being made in Italy, and it's just very exciting. But I will think I'll do some beautiful shoots with it and then sit and see what happens. And
you should.
Yeah.
We rushed. I didn't rush. I felt very, very pressured by other talent-driven brands to drop things faster.
Yeah.
And what you said about the homewares world moving slower. I mean, I started with 3 products a year ago, and we're about to launch our 15th product. And I'm like, okay, we're about to launch 5 new ones. And it's enough for I have to slow down and let it.
Congratulations. Yeah.
But I agree what you're saying. You need to let the pot simmer and see what bubbles to the top and what you want to hang your hat on. And
Exactly. Do you know who else you should have on here is Julia Barrelzheimer. She is similar background, and they live in Charleston, but they launched, having been an influencer for ages, but she still is, she's launched a homewares and fashion brand. But what I loved is when they launched, they said, when the new stuff's ready is when it's ready. It's not adhering to these crazy schedules of collections dropping, and it is handmade. It's here when it's here. And obviously, if you don't want to be waiting years and years for that. But I think I like that approach.
I like that approach a lot. And social media can get the best of you and make you feel like you're doing much worse than you are, when in actuality, you're doing just fine. Before I let you go, do you have a moment of brand building, whether it's brand Louise or Sharland, that lives rent free in your head from your life that was like, God, that moment that was a blessing or a blunder?
Oh, what you mean? A moment where something big happened?
Yeah, that just you'll always if it was your framed $2 bill on the wall, that would be it.
Okay. I think it's probably more in the entertainment industry, because especially now that red carpet events aren't really happening, certainly not in the way they used to. I think it's more those moments. And I anchored the ABC show for the Oscars on my own stage live. We had 36 million viewers, which I didn't know at the time. And then I got to go inside and watch the actual show. Now, that's not necessarily brand building, but I think
it's brand Louise.
It's pinch me moments that you think this will never happen again. I'm going to soak up every minute. And you do think, God, you can kind of do anything after that. So sometimes it's like in retrospect, you've been given confidence by something, and that allows you the freedom to go and pursue this other path. But I think doing as much research as you can on anything, I'm a big proponent of homework. And that is honestly whether I'm on the red carpet or talking to probably 20 different people in the interiors industry who were kind enough to give up their time and have long chats with me, many of whom I didn't know at all. They were just a friend of a friend of a friend. And some were even in the wicker and rattan industry. So I'm like, gosh, you're doubly kind doing this for me. So I think homework, I love to buy old books that are out of print, like House and Garden, 1989 interiors, and you can buy them on Etsy and eBay. And those pictures are not on social media. So I find those incredibly inspiring. And I think, that's probably the book version of me going to some old museum and just soaking it up. And I love to go on those trips on my own, because those are just, I love that, bit of a
You've left me with so many. I have my pencil in my hand, the back half of this interview, and I've got a whole page of notes with circles and doodles, and you've left me inspired. And every time I talk to you, I'm always happier. And I'm so glad
you need to go to Grasse in the south of France. That's where all the noses are and all the perfume and soap companies where they make.
Le Labo Le Labo does a lot of stuff out of Grasse. I was before I saw you in London in November, I was meant to actually be in Paris, but This
Oh, yes.
this irresponsible COVID non-checker passporter has a passport that expires next month, so she wasn't allowed into France.
Oh,
So,
hun.
so I'll be back soon. But when I'm
Good.
back, I'll come and come to your fancy new warehouse and drive the forklift.
Oh, yeah, brilliant. And I'll be your assistant to Paris. No
Yes, please. You can
trouble.
be my nose in chief.
Yes.
Louise, how can everybody find you and your brand?
At Sharland_England and at Louise Roe. Yeah, that's me. Easy.
Louise, thank you so much for taking a time out of the juggliest of schedules to sit down with me.
Thank you so much. I miss you very much. You are the best.
On either side of the pond, hopefully very soon. We'll see each other. For more on the show, you can find us on Instagram at BrandMePodcast or at Preston Konrad. Be sure, of course, to rate, review, and subscribe and share on social. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week.